Hi, my name's Mark Stow, and welcome to Little Green Man, the show. I think that does a really good job, if not a fantastic job, of proving that Canadian politics is very sexy. Yeah. So what are you going to do? As a Canadian, what are you going to do when it's your turn to play with our new pipeline? Yes, of course, I'm being absolutely ridiculously silly, because it was a silly thing that our Prime Minister did. Who would like to buy a pipeline for $4.5 billion that a company, a US company, has already walked away from because it is not going to be worth their time or their effort to make the millions and bazillions of dollars that they wanted to make. So what was the point? And it's really difficult to kind of get into this to actually find out what the real reason was. I don't think there are very many people that think this is a good idea. But, and this is an important but, this is good for the economy. This is in Canada's best interest. And you know, when someone says something like that to you in vague and in broad terms, you know they're selling you a big pile of crap. This is a crock full of feces. That is all this is. If you can't be specific with a promise, yeah, no, it's just something to try and trick you into going along with them. The GDP will go up, therefore it must be good. And he's absolutely right. Any claim that the GDP will go up because of any kind of financial transaction, whether you're paying a debt or whether you're making money from a business, GDP goes up. So $4.5 billion, what does that mean to the gross domestic product? That means the gross domestic product will go up by $4.5 billion the year that money changes hands. Now what would happen, and that's good, so the GDP goes up by $4.5 billion, so that's fantastic. But if you just took $4.5 billion of taxpayers' money and created jobs with them, so $4.5 billion would be hundreds of thousands of people, even if it's just making minimum wage, just cleaning the streets or something. Just work that will keep them busy, get them gainfully employed. GDP would go up by how much? 4.5 billion. No, it would go up by much more than that, because people on minimum wage don't save their money. So they would be paid $4.5 billion and they would spend almost all of that and it will go back into the economy. So likely the economy would actually grow by probably closer to $8 billion just by that one instance. So it would be better just to give the money to poor people, to give them a job. Now, whether or not this is going to be a business that will make money or not for Canadians, I don't think is really clear how that is going to make any money for us, particularly buying into an industry that is already dying a death that everybody wants to get out of. Lots of protests. It seems lots and lots of people don't really want this at all. But for $4.5 billion for a crappy old leaky pipeline, really, if you want to put that into perspective, the federal government has refused, at least to my knowledge up to this point, to repair the rail lines in Churchill, Manitoba that got washed out. Rail lines that got washed out, and a US corporation pulled out and left. Now the government and this company are suing each other, but these people in Churchill are still without a rail. We can't afford to give $20 million to the people of Churchill just so they can live a decent life, so they can actually get food that's affordable delivered to them, so they can come and go as they please, rather than they're landlocked, surrounded by water and marshland, for the want of $20 million that our Prime Minister seems to think is too expensive. The people of Churchill, Manitoba just aren't worth that. But greedy executives apparently are worth the $4.5 billion for this oil pipeline. Now there's going to be billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars more to be spent on this, which I won't go into too much. But there's going to be another pipeline or two that's going to be doubling or trebling the amount of oil going through the pipes, being delivered through BC. And don't forget the spills, because there's nothing that is absolutely guaranteed by this. The more pipeline you get, the more spills you're going to have. There are going to be hundreds of thousands of gallons, barrels and whatever big amounts of oil measured in right across Canada. It's going to be absolutely devastating. Now, we've learned nothing. It's good for the economy. The economy is going to be great. Albertans might think this is a good idea, but it is a foolish foolish idea, because we've had about 60 years of this resource-based economy that the progressive conservatives, the conservative government of Alberta, rode on. They saved nothing, almost nothing. They just gave the money, they gave the resources on the cheap to private corporations. They gave some of the money to people to mollify them. The economy was doing well. The minimum wage was gone up. I think it even got up to 15, I think, in that range. And then suddenly, in 2015, the oil prices crashed and they went through the floor, and Alberta's economy went with it. It was so disastrous that at 60 years, like 2.5 generations of conservative government was ousted, and quite decisively ousted as well. And so what Albertans are now left with is to do the same thing again. Something that devastated them again was to be based on a resource-based economy, which is really an economy that is based on an incredibly limited supply of things. As soon as that supply runs out, the economy is going to crash. It's going to explode. Boo. Well, maybe not explode, but figuratively it will, or it'll implode. It's going to be disastrous again, and we know it will, because it's already happened once. Why is Alberta backing again a losing horse? Really, the money, that 4.5 billion, would be way better served just investing in a better economy, in renewables, in solar power, or something else, so that Alberta would have something at least to look forward to in the future, because the oil, the only thing they have to look forward to in the future, is yet another and even more devastating crash in their economy. Now, if we've got anything to learn from the XL pipeline down south there, what happens when there's lots of money involved and there are big corporations involved, and they don't get their way when protesters protest? Well, what happened in the US were police were coming forward and working on behalf of the corporation, and were throwing tear gas, and I think it was shot grenades, flashbangs, and intimidating the people. People lost limbs and lost their sights for some of the violence that was being done by this private corporation. Private corporations don't have the authority to do that, but yet they were allowed to do it. Barack Obama, the great, wonderful president, turned a blind eye and just hoped it would go away. Now, what we have to watch for here is that we have already had in Canada, we've had 2 members of parliament, political opponents of Justin Trudeau, who were arrested for protesting peacefully, not violently, not threatening anybody, for just saying no, just for protesting. They were put in jail. This is a horrific step forward. No respect for people that have been elected by the people. And that's now before the government even owned it. Now something called eminent domain comes along. Now they want to build that pipeline. Not only can you not get in the way because it's the government, and the government technically, the state of Canada technically owns the land you live on, even though you've got the deed to live there, you've got the rights to live there, they can kick you off at any time using something called eminent domain. If they so choose, and that is so determined that they want to do it, people could lose their homes, they could lose their land, they could, and they're going to lose their land, because that's the only way this pipe is going to be built. The land is not there in the possession of the company that Trudeau wants to buy this pipeline from. So there's going to be some appropriation of land, some, I think, misappropriation, if that's the right word. Definitely legalized theft of people's private property, people's homes, people's lands are going to go. And of course, people are going to rise up. And what happens then? Are we going to see more of the same as we saw in the US? Just because we have a desire and need to appease and to help out these multinational corporations that seem to do little for anyone but themselves. But one of the reasons why this is kind of odd is that there's no real reason to do it. It's a failed pipeline. The company has already backed out of it, but yet Justin Trudeau wants to come in and buy the pipeline that is unfinished, that is leaky, when there's another 1 or 2 pipelines extra to build, so much more to be done. Now, there was an article in The Guardian, if I remember, I'll put a link in the description, that suggested, and it was just a suggestion, there wasn't any real evidence, that maybe Justin Trudeau was scared. He was cowardly scared of something called ISDS, Investor State Dispute Settlement, which is something that is part of free trade. This is that free trade that gives corporations as much power as possible and much protection on their profits, which goes over the rights of average Canadians. That means if a country passes a law that protects its citizens, but for some reason or somehow it infringes on the ability for a corporation to make its profits under the free trade agreements, they can sue the country for their loss of profits. And this is what that article was saying. Is Justin Trudeau cowardly scared, even as a neoliberal, cowardly scared of corporations that might sue Canada, which doesn't seem to have bothered him? We've been sued many, many, many times successfully before. We've actually been sued more times than any other country in NAFTA, believe this or not. We are the worst hit. And he's cowardly scared. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. Maybe, but that makes some sense. At least there's a little bit of logic if that is the case. But I think whatever happens here, whatever the future holds, I mean, one thing is for sure. I think this really is marking the end of Trudeau's reign, whether he gets in or not. He's going to be remembered. This is going to be that point where his illogic and maybe his arrogance, maybe isn't the right word, but his doggedness, his inability or unwillingness to listen to the people of Canada. And maybe that we'll look at the scars that this oil pipe will leave with these bitumen, literally these black, nasty, disgusting scars across Canada. And maybe we can call those the pools of Trudeau. Little green man. This is the back door to the Manitoba legislature. Now, if you hit the subscribe button now, hit the notification bell, then you won't be surprised when they try to stick something up your back door.